A congressional candidate from the state of Virginia has openly admitted that he was running websites that supported the notion of legalizing pedophilia, raping wives, and all sorts of things that you wouldn't imagine someone would publicly support. His name is Nathan Larson, and I am going to give you some of the details of what he included, what he himself contributed to these websites. When asked whether he's a pedophile or just writes about pedophilia, he said, quote, "It's a mix of both. When people go over the top, there's a grain of truth to what they say." So when I read you some of the things that he himself had posted on that website, just understand that he himself says that there is a grain of truth to what he's writing, even if it sounds like it's over the top, or even if it is over the top. All right, so these websites have been taken down, and Huffington Post broke this story, and they investigated those websites and tied it back to this congressional candidate. I'm gonna give you some of the other disgusting things that we've learned. He told the Huffington Post, "A lot of people are tired of political correctness and being constrained by it. People prefer when there's an outsider who doesn't have anything to lose and is willing to say what's on a lot of people's minds." So he is thinking of himself as this anti-establishment candidate that most people or a lot of people can relate to, but they're too afraid to represent themselves in this way out in the open. Asked whether there was a grain of truth in his essay about father-daughter incest and another about raping his ex-wife repeatedly, he said yes, offering that plenty of women have rape fantasies. Let me read one more and then we'll open it up to the panel. His platform as a quasi-neo-reactionary libertarian candidate includes protecting gun ownership rights, establishing free trade, and protecting benevolent white supremacy, as well as legalizing incestuous marriage and child pornography. He also believes that Adolf Hitler was a hero.
So now look, does he represent all right-wingers? Of course not. And he's running as an independent, although obviously very, very right-wing. And so he doesn't represent all Republicans either. But unfortunately, this era has given permission to some people to do and say outrageous things. He said a lot of people who disagreed with someone like Trump might vote for them anyway, just because the establishment doesn't like them. So that's his plan. He's like, I'm not going to be politically correct. I'm going to tell you that I want to have sex with children. And you guys voted for Trump because you hated the establishment so much, so you might vote for me. I mean, that's what he's saying. So now when you think, I mean, all the things that Anna said, it can't possibly get worse, right? I mean, it's as bad. It gets worse. It's almost as bad as you can imagine. No, it gets worse. So he is in favor of child rape, and he thinks that you should adopt kids so that you could rape them.
That's exactly what he said. And these are quotes that he gave to Huffington Post. They were interviewing him. These are things he said. He said, "We need to switch to a system that classifies women as property, initially of their fathers and later of their husbands." He also showed sympathy for men who identify as involuntary celibates or incels, suggesting it is unfair that they are forced to pay taxes for schools, welfare, and other support for other men's children. And at one point, he compares women to animals, literally women to animals, and he says something about how, well, women still have it better than animals because at least they get to procreate.
Yeah, he said women are objects to be taken care of by men like any other property. Female sex slaves actually get a much better deal than animals because in most cases they're allowed to reproduce, unlike animals raised for meat or companionship. And so that is also part of a larger symptom here. Now he's the most extreme end of it, I get that. And not everybody, not even all the incels think like this, and they've got their own issues obviously. But we live in an era where he feels empowered to put this out there and thinks, hey, I got a shot, because there's a lot of people who apparently do agree with me and have now come out of the closet. He says, why doesn't every pedo just focus on making money so they can get a pedo wife and then either impregnate her with some F toys or adopt some F toys? That's what he calls kids, F toys, okay? And he says the adoption process lets you pick a boy or a girl. And if all of that wasn't bad enough, he's got a 3-year-old daughter.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
Something that you said that I think is so important is that like he felt comfortable saying this stuff out loud. And where does that come from? This started with we have a president who felt comfortable, mic'd up, saying that he likes to grab women by their vagina. And a lot of people took it as, oh, it's a joke. In Alabama, there were so many people saying 14-year-olds were probably asking for it, or being flirtatious, or being fast. And it's, of course, you can't say this is the same as this is the same, but it's all bad. And he felt like the worst thing isn't going to happen to him if he said this out loud.
No, but not only that, sorry, Maytha, but he thinks it's actually smart political strategy. Right? Like it worked for Trump, why wouldn't it work for me? So I don't know. I mean, all of a sudden, all these demons and all these terrible people think it's awesome to come out and show the world who they really are. I guess that's a good thing in terms of transparency. At least we know who is dangerous and we should look out for. But at the same time, it's really depressing to know that this kind of thought process goes through anyone's mind.
Right, and the fact that this is being interpreted as a tactic, or not just a tactic, but this is interpreted as behavior wherein people are truth-telling. And we are the fearless truth-tellers, like Trump, like 45 was the fearless truth-teller. So that's the most disheartening thing about this story. I mean, there's so many disheartening things. Like I was telling Cenk, I didn't want to know so much about the lingo and the culture and the conversation within this incel, I guess it's called, community. I will bring up some good thars about the story. One is that he's not gonna win. It's clearly not gonna win. He has dredged up some of the sewage in our nation. And the second thing, which I was really proud of the USA Today, I mean, we knock a lot of mainstream publication, they outright called him a pedophile and white supremacist. And so thankfully we are naming it in some regard.
That was very brave of them to do.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I was surprised. The last thing I'll say though is that this is part of a philosophy in libertarianism influenced by Ayn Rand, who wrote Atlas Shrugged and The Fountainhead, this idea of selfish desires guiding your politics. I know I'm oversimplifying it, so for folks who are libertarians, I'm not saying all libertarians think this way, but the ones that are motivated by these really gruesome desires of rape and conditioning it as if it is normal, as if there's nothing wrong with it, as if there is a community, so it's okay, it's justifiable. That sort of stuff does come from this woman's literature and her revival around it. And also, thank you, John Oliver, for talking about how gruesome the kind of political philosophies that her books have produced.
Yeah, so a couple of things. So the incel community is different than the pedos, whatever you call them, and I didn't know there was an overlap, but apparently there's an overlap in some areas.
Shocker.
Yeah, I know. And so look, if you have not had sex and you're bummed about it, welcome to the world, right? So that happens for literally almost every guy in the world at some point, right? It's another thing to take that to an extreme, and a lot of people read these blogs, people participated in these blogs, and his blogs were that crossover of insanity. So he talked about raping the kids, and people were like, yeah, go get him, etc. He talked about at the end, he's like, well, look, I'm kind of an incel, but it doesn't really count because I keep raping my ex-wife. His ex-wife eventually got a protective order against him, and don't worry, they took his daughter away, and his wife won on that issue, I would imagine easily in court. She, by the way, has passed away, so the 3-year-old is with other family now, and hopefully we'll never see him again. I hope. But now to the part of the incel community, I don't know, I feel weird calling them a community, that is filled with anger and hatred against women. He spoke to that and he said, don't forget, feminism is the problem and rape is the solution.
He compared women to animals, which my first thought was, he compared humans to animals. Where have I heard that before?
Yeah.
So this is, look, it's the most extreme part of it. I hope it doesn't get worse than this. I always say this barrel for right-wingers, this barrel doesn't have a bottom. I think we found it. I think this is the bottom. I literally cannot imagine what could be lower than this.
Can I read one more of his quotes that
he voluntarily gave in an interview.
Right.
Well, this was actually from one of the websites. This was something that he had posted. He said, and again, let's just reiterate, he does not have custody of his daughter, thankfully. He said, I just want to bang my daughter, actually. But even if it were legal, I'm not sure it would happen since I don't have custody. After sex with kids is legalized, parents or other guardians will still be gatekeepers to some extent, and a lot of them will want to bang their own kids and not share with others.
This is so gross.
We know that pedophilia exists. It's just, I don't know, even through everything that we've talked about on this show over the years, I just was, I guess, still naive and didn't think that people this bad existed, but he exists.
I'm excited about the R. Kelly stories that are gonna be coming out because I think we're gonna have to face this conversation on a national level in terms of are there limits and conversation that we need to have in terms of, I think we did a story, we were about to do a story about mandatory minimum ages for marriage, which not all states have.
Right.
At all.
Yeah, and so look, Trump obviously famously said there are good people on both sides, not referring to incels or pedophilia, but about Charlottesville. But that was the extreme right wing, and they were doing Nazi chants about getting rid of the Jews in the middle of America in Charlottesville, Virginia. And so now this guy is a candidate in Charlottesville, Virginia, and he says, hold my beer, I can do better. And so as we've gotten to this point, I hope this is the end. I hope that the pendulum starts to swing back, but there is a certain insanity that has been encouraged in this country, and it is clearly coming from one side. And I don't know if there are any responsible people left on that side. It's easy to condemn this guy and say he's not one of us. Super easy to do that. But are you going around and saying, no, all the people who say that, hey, when there's other forms of hate speech, hey, it's just political correctness. And this guy says the same thing. Oh, I'm just being politically incorrect. He talks about, hey, they're taking my blogs away where I want to encourage raping kids. That's against my freedom of speech. And so I've seen this movie before.
Yep.
So are you going to then begin to caution against other forms of hate speech that leads down this road? My guess is, hell no. The right wing is going to continue to encourage people to push the envelope.
So I'm gonna add something to that might be controversial, but I think it's important for us to do a better job in differentiating between the type of speech that should be policed and the type of speech that I think people are being overly sensitive about. Because when this kind of stuff comes up, you don't want the reaction to be, oh, it's just PC culture, whatever. No, this is not PC culture. This is the kind of stuff that is wrong. And when we start nitpicking on every little word that someone says, intent matters. If someone has no intent to harm others, no intent to say anything offensive, and we get on them, and then there's like this national case about getting them fired, well then that's when you start losing reasonable people who would look at a story like this and say, yeah, this is wrong. We should police this type of content online.
So I'll just say the last thing on this, Anna. So I hear you on that, and that is definitely true, and we are for actual freedom of expression and speech on the show, and we've defended conservatives who have been banned from college campuses, etc. But Rush Limbaugh and his ilk started calling women feminazis. And that's what led down this road. It did. They demonized feminists, they demonized women over and over and over again. And they began a culture and a cult of hatred. And so this is the very end of that road. But I remember the beginning of the road, I remember the middle of the road, and all along that road, the right wing kept saying, nope, it's just you being politically correct. I get to say and spread my hatred and my fear and my sick culture as far as I like. Yeah, you get to do it, but this, at least one of the ends of the road was this. So I hope you're proud. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below. Then you're a TYT subscriber. And second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.